Like if you know what you kind of want to pursue, you need to play by a set of rules in the interim to actually give you the best shot at making that happen. Like if you want to do some of the things I'm talking about now, the best place for you likely isn't going to be just like going through university, getting your first corporate job because they're going to salary you $80K a year. It's like get a good solid mentor, a good solid company, go a more unconventional route to gather skills. Like it's just kind of understanding what it is you want and then trying to make sure that everything you're doing now is optimizing for that rather than just what everyone else is currently saying you need to think or do.
MyCore is on a mission to be the world's most people-centric company. The purpose of this podcast is to get to the core of people. I'm your host, Nathan Bourne, and I invite you to join me as we deep dive into the personal and professional lives of our guests. We're going to learn who they are, why they exist, and what they do. We're going to hear their stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In other words, we're going to talk to some really cool people. Welcome to the MyCore podcast. Alrighty, hello. Welcome to the MyCore podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Bourne, and I'm here with the one and only Colby Harris. What's up, bro? Really excited for this episode. In fact, fun fact, we did an episode just shy of 2 hours about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we had a great conversation. We were jazzed about it. We were like, nailed it, sick, gonna be amazing. And this microphone, I actually, for the record, I thought it was just not on, which is embarrassing. It turns out that it was jacked up within like the mixer and we fixed it. Can you help me? And now we're live, we're loud, we're clear. But welcome back, man.
Back again. Yeah, thanks for having me back. No, I knew we had to come back and make it right after the first session, but like we've been talking about all morning, I don't think it's an issue. You know, we're going to do what we do again and provide something great for everyone listening. So thanks for reorganizing it and setting up the time to make it happen again.
Likewise, man. I know you're a busy guy and you got a lot going on, and I appreciate you taking the time this morning, and I want to keep it. I was even hesitant, like, do I want to let people know that we technically did this episode? Because there were some authentic moments that we had. And, it's just like any conversation, any relationship. You might talk for 2 hours and have like a really deep, meaningful conversation and connection. And then now you have a new understanding of that person, right? You have a new perspective on their backstory and their origin story and their journey. So in a way, I think it's going to work out because now that I have all this context of the struggles that you've gone through, the things that you've overcome and just like doing the deal, it makes me respect you more. It makes me impressed. I mean, Colby is 22 years old. You turned 22 in July. Mm-hmm. Amazing. I'm 35. I'll be 36 just next month in October. And as I sat here talking with you during that episode, take one, I thought, man, we have a lot of similar, I was practically biting my tongue to not just like me to you the whole time, like, oh, me too. That happened to me when I was 25, So I'm thrilled to kind of start to unpack that. And for our listeners, just to give you like some general things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about daddy issues because you got them, I got them, we got them. It's not just the girls that got daddy issues, it's mainly us, us boys and men. We're going to talk about your professional career. We're going to talk about breaking norms, trailblazing, particularly as a Gen Z. I'm excited to talk about your brand and the entity that you've formed recently. Gen Z Trailblazers, what's up, hashtag. And I want to just kind of get into like your head a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think that you're doing some things that are against the grain. You're doing some things that probably yield some criticism, not because it's controversial or anything, but because a dog doesn't bark at a parked car, right? So if you're moving and shaking and you're driving and you're doing your thing, you're going to have people that are critical of that. And it's easy to be that if you're not really in the fray and in the fight. So tell us a little about you, man. Where you from? What do you do for a living currently? And then let's get to those daddy issues.
Yeah. Well, it's good to be back. I'm what a lot of people, my friends, consider,
Hey, Kenya. I just texted you.
I know.
What's up? We're not editing this out. We're keeping it in.
Yes, so no, good to be back because I'm really what a lot of my friends call in terms of like what I am professionally. I'm a professional yapper, right? I talk for a living, basically. So awesome. Yeah, right now I'm in sales at a private equity firm, so not really overseeing mergers and acquisition side as much as I work inside of a number of our portfolio companies. So on the phones all day, driving 100 to 200 conversations every day with potential clients.
Hold on, I gotta stop you make $200 a day?
Yeah, on a good day, because in this game it's very self-sufficient, which I think is really important to me right now. Is just like there's no one to point at or blame, or they're not giving me leads or this, that, and the other. We've got 70,000 people in our CRM, waiting to be contacted. Right. So yeah, I do a lot of dials, which I think honestly is surprising, just kind of the same way you said it, like it's become a norm. I've been in the sales world now for about 7 months now, just really wanting to be in a high income industry that I could maximize a preset skill of communication. Right. So yeah, usually 200 is kind of like that's like a damn good day. But I would say 100 is a minimum. And on average, I would say I do float closer to that 150 mark.
I think people need to hear that, man. I want people from our team to hear that because I think back to my early stages when I was probably about your age. And I would have, like, I think they're called like tally tags, or, it's like you put a line and then a line and then a line, and then you cross out those lines, like 4 and then the 5th one. Mm-hmm. I would use those for whatever reason. They drove me. So I'd have a little notebook, like one of these here. And every day I would make my dials, make my calls, and boom, 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 cross it out, boom, boom. And then it would push me because I would never end without completing one of those chunks of 5, and I would be like on my 3rd or 38th call. And I'm like, I got to make 2 more for it to be 40. And then I'll take a break or whatever. And it was always in those like few extra calls, particularly compounded over time. It might not be that day, but over the year, it was like made all the difference. So do you have little games you do, or like, wait, I mean, $200 is, because also you said conversations. And I think that might even be some mindset that you're like deploying, because you're not talking to 200 people a day. So that's not
voicemails and things like that, but dials. Yes. Yeah. So like 200 phones will ring because Colby's on the other line trying to sell you something. And now granted, I really do appreciate what we do. Like, again, just to kind of give some background, the private equity firm is Collective Influence, and a lot of our brands are focused on entrepreneurship, personal finance, real estate investing. So it's really cool. Like, I mean, these guys are big players. One of the people that run our real estate brand, has done over 1,000 flips, owns, north, or is part owner in north of 9 figures worth of real estate. The other one has built and exited over 90 companies now. So guys that really do it. So it's cool to
loser.
I know, right? Like, who is this guy?
L7
I know it takes a lot to get nicknamed like King of Exits, right. Which is funny because I'm like, man, what a pimp. But anyway, it's cool to work for guys.
His logo should just be him like giving deuces.
Yeah. So it's about just connecting. Like, there's actually a quote I just saw. You probably saw it in the building right now. There's an office that has a quote of the day. They had it last time I was here, and today the quote is sell the problem, not the product. And I've really learned a lot about that in this role, is because like what we sell is damn good. So I'm just bridging the gap. It's so common these days to have an education gap. And thankfully, that's exactly what we do, is help people, whether it's bridge gaps in their financial IQ, in the business, in their real estate portfolio, just kind of all across the board, how we can help people create success in their own way. So it's really cool. And outside of doing that, really that's been a big focus. But, I've got the background that I'm sure we'll go into, I was in a startup from 17 to 21 before I decided to make a change, kind of venture out onto my own, develop new skills in a new space. But yeah, really just now forming another small, early stage formation with something that really means a lot to me, called Gen Z Trailblazers. We can dive into kind of where that came about, but just focused on helping people like myself, to be honest, because it's not easy to live in the age that we're in. However, it's really almost, I hate to use the word easy, but it's almost easy to win if you know what to be doing and what to look for.
Yeah, man. I want to talk about that too, because one of the ways I frame it is like in the developed world, right? Or first world problems. And it's mainly mental, right? It's mental health, it's mental wellness, it's mental stamina, building just resilience mentally. So I want to dive into that. Quickly, I had a question. Have you seen the movie The Boiler Room?
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie. It's a good classic. And one of my favorite parts of the movie kind of reminds me of the way you're describing what you're doing currently, is when he's starting to get good at sales and he's like eating breakfast, kind of getting ready for the day. And he gets a call from like a kid that's selling the newspaper. I don't know if you remember this scene, but he's trying to sell him on, the movie's in the 90s, like early 90s. So he's selling him on like a newspaper subscription, right? Like for the New York Times or something. And he's like, come on, man, like, sell me, okay. He's like, tell me about it, and he's like he's like conjuring out of the kid, like, don't just take no for an answer, because he was just being like a punk on the other side. And he gets him to kind of like, pitch it, like, well, they'll be there every day and it has the greatest news and, you'll be the first to know. And then he's like, good, much better, or whatever. And then he's like, so do you want to sign up? He's like, hell no. He clicks the bell. It made me think about the people that you're calling, because you're not like cold calling random people, right? Mm-hmm. You're cold calling other movers and shakers, other salespeople. So they respect the hustle, right? Like you got to show up and sort of outwit them to be like, oh, okay, like I see what you're doing, right? Because they know the game, they know the approach.
They're in the ecosystem.
They're in that world. It's got to be weird to kind of sell to salespeople.
Yeah,
talk to me about it. How do you navigate? What's your approach? Like, what's your angle?
Yeah, I've come a long way in terms of sales skills, and I think that there's a lot of room to grow still. It's an interesting game, just like we're talking about. Like, there's a whole mindset to it to actually really be good at sales. It goes back to not being the Jordan Belfort of sales, but like just an expert problem solver. And we have so many brands and opportunities for people to work with us that it's like really big part of my job is just identifying what makes sense. So I really try and take a mentality of just like drop the sale and try and help them. And something that a great sales mentor of mine said is, if you can solve someone's problem on the phone and they don't buy, it's a win just to know you help them. And more often than not, though, if you can solve their problem just in the time you connected, they're probably going to want to get involved with what you're doing in some way. But I would say it's just funny. Like some people call me out for it sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have any stories of like, I know what you're doing? Like,
let me think.
Or
not really, but I've got a good one.
Rejection?
I've actually got a really good one that just happened last week. Okay. So I'm in a Snapchat group chat with like all my siblings and just like really my tight crew. And I love Snapchat. Yeah, I'm Gen Z again, obviously. So I love Snapchat, keeping everyone updated through the day. We could all be like suffering and we're all talking about how like, gosh, this day sucks. But I always send snaps in there, and more often than not, like no one responds to me, right? There's like 7 or 8 of us in there. No one responds. Well, the other day, I'm sitting there and I do texts, I do calls, I do emails, I do a little bit of everything. But I hit this one guy up and, was trying to get him out to one of our events. And I sent him my whole just brief, couple texts or whatever. And his response, again, my name is Colby. Middle name is actually Jackson. So Colby Jack in a way, which I've always called Wind of. This guy just texted me back just one line. He just says, "Wrong number, cheese boy."
Cheese boy.
I know. The best part was taking a Snapchat of it and being I sent it into that group chat and I'm like, my title is no longer sales. I just get verbally abused for a living. And every single person responds. And it's like cackling, laughing, just like making fun of my pain. So awesome. I have a bunch of different interactions every day. And I think that the rejection side's funny because like I even saw something about it the other day that it's never even crossed my mind. People were like, how resilient you have to be in sales is because you're basically just getting told no all the time. And I don't know what it is, but it like never really crossed my mind that that's a big barrier for most people. I just never really cared, but I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's hard, if you think about it the wrong way. But
that's an important piece, I think, because if you're building your identity in your work, particularly like that activity of your work, not like the whole point of it or the purpose of it, you're really setting yourself up for failure. Wouldn't you agree? It's like you source your confidence from elsewhere, right? It's not like that person saying yes. It feels good to connect. It feels good for them to vibe with you and dig you, and it's a win, right? But you probably know, I know you know, because you're a pro and you're doing really well, that it being a numbers game. I'd be curious your take on this, like kind of just hot take here. Like you hear that all the time, like it's a numbers game, or one way that I heard it years ago and always stuck with me was that, every deck of cards has 4 aces. And if you flip them over long enough, you're going to hit 4 aces. You just don't know if it's going to be the first one you flip over, the 27th, the 48th. It's like, but you're guaranteed out of the 52 cards, 4 of them are aces. The part that people don't typically, have a lot of fun with is the 48 non-aces, right? And they don't have the resilience. They don't have the like mental durability to get through those other cards. And I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they try to change the other cards, right? Mm-hmm. Particularly in the royal family, the jacks, the queens, the kings. And I used to do a training and I would joke about this, and I would bring a deck of cards, right? And I would do my live trainings and I would like flip them over. And when I would get to the jack, I would be like, this is the biggest mistake people make, is they try to turn the jack into an ace, right? And you start looking at going, I guess and I'd grab like a marker and I'd be like, you could probably make this look like an ace. And I'd be like, you're trying to make the jack an ace, but the jack isn't an ace. The jack is just a jackass. It's like, let it be a jack ace, or whatever. And it was just this little play on words.
I'm sure that killed the crowd every time.
Oh, every time. Yeah. And I would deliver it even better then, where I was just like, let them be the jack. They're a jack ace or whatever, So I'm saying all that to say that it seems like you are finding confidence outside of those 48 no's, those 48 rejections, those 48 non-ace cards. And I think if people can take the wins from the 4 aces and let that drive them through the next 17 no's. And those 17s aren't 17 dials. That might be 17 days. That could be 17 weeks. I mean, it can be, the valleys are pretty dry. Like shit, So I'm kind of curious, like, what is the self-talk that goes through your mind, and where are the sources that you like siphon from to keep yourself going through that?
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything else where it does come in ebbs and flows. So I'm far from perfect, but I think where it really gets you is the days that you really don't want to do it. Just knowing that, I am 1099, 100% commission. Like right. For instance, right now, being on this podcast right now, like I'm not going to get paid. I'm not like a salaried individual or anything. Right. So I only get paid when my feet move and like I'm on the phones doing dials. So, for starters, like I've just, I've been dirt broke. I've like been down that path before, and I know now I'm not going to get paid unless I move my feet. So that's a big driver, just knowing that like I want to pay the bills. But secondarily, I had one of my biggest deals close in July. I closed a $17,000 deal in 32 minutes, made a big old paycheck. I mean, I'm basically making $4,000 an hour is my running rate at that point. Right. So that was a random conversation that came from doing dials. Right. So you just don't know who's on the other line or who's behind the next phone. And as long as I've been doing this now, the last couple months, that's been huge, because I learned that early on, where it was like, you're just in a rut, you get through 50 to 100 of your dials for the day. 100's kind of where you're like, technically it's been a full work day for like a standard salesperson. But that's when you're like, nothing's happened. Can I get 10 more? Yeah. Nothing happens. Can I get 10 more? And you just keep ticking up, and then boom, it all clicks. So I would say for me, it's just like you said, it really is just a numbers game. I learned that very early on. So just the drive to chase what I know I want, but also knowing that it's not going to come to me in any way, shape, or form. Right. You really, in this source space, you have to go out and you have to do the doubts. You have to do the hard, unsexy work that will ultimately set you apart as well, which competitive nature drives me to be like, well, you're not going to outdial me. Right, it's not going to happen.
How's that going? I know when we attempted this podcast the first time, you had some new salespeople joining the team, and obviously there's a database with plenty of opportunities. It sounds like you said 70,000 contacts. Are you still eating their lunch? Or I don't know if they'll listen to this, or does that drive you to have more people, or is it like have you had to go through a little bit of like battling scarcity mindset versus abundant mindset? Because on one hand you could be like, oh, there's X amount of contacts and now there's this many more salespeople, or you could think there's plenty to go around, there's plenty of opportunity. Are you kidding me? We could never shake this tree entirely. I'm curious how you kind of battle some of that.
Yeah, I mean, first mindset that I wanted to have coming into it was just like rising tides lifts all boats. I mean, I've only been in this for 7 months, right? Like when I got into sales, I knew I was a great communicator, but I wanted to be a kick-ass closer, right? It's two different things. Totally. So I knew I wanted to excel as a closer, and only being in it for as long as I've been in it, like you can't be the best, right? Like I'm not here to say that I'm some like expert at what I do yet. Again, a lot of it just goes back to work ethic, connecting with the right people. But I knew that them bringing in someone that might be more seasoned would really set me up for success. And, no discredit to one of the new hires. He's great. He's been in sales as well, a little bit younger, more like me. But I feel like a real driving force right now is one of those new hires. Because he's been in sales for a long time. He's about your age, and he's just doing things differently than I would, and I'm learning from him. And short term, like sure, maybe there's like a little bit of fallout, but like again, yesterday was a day that I did for sure over like 200 dials. Nice. So making up for that, just putting it back into your court. But trusting too in our company and our leadership right now, like of course in any growth, parts are always moving with our company, whether that's new hires, changing the offers, changing the brands, rebranding. We're doing a whole rebrand right now. So it's just another day in the life, right? And I have a lot of trust in them right now to be like, well, look, being in sales, like we're driving the company, we're driving the revenue. So they're putting a lot of effort into our division right now of just driving revenue for all the different offers and brands. That makes me feel like regardless of what they've got on the sales floor, all of that, they're there to set themselves up for success. And if they're going to be driving revenue, ultimately I'm at the forefront of that. Right. So just staying optimistic in that way. And I think at first, I wouldn't say a whole scarcity like mindset ever really came in, because this has been conversations for months. Like it wasn't my second week that they hired another guy. I was the first in our sales floor, cool. Right? So I came up with a lot of the copy, wrote the scripts. Like it's definitely a good feeling to know that like for what I provided me and the other first guy, I mean, we did $250,000 in revenue in 120 days. Wow. So not incredible, but more enough to keep them happy and also make sure that we were well paid. Right. So just knowing that anything could happen at any time, and this whole process, the last 4 months of being with this company, just having that mindset of like, things are going to change, but how much faith do you have in this company and the leadership? And I've seen all the offers, I've experienced them. So I know just what we have to offer and that they're going to drive us in the right direction. And I'm just along for the ride right now, to learn, excel at my role, but they're playing business at a high level, which was very important to me in this next chapter is like, having a full-time chief revenue officer, company president. We've got 2-3 people on customer support. We've got 2-3 people on member relations partners, whole design floor for content creators. Nice. It's just, we've got 50 people in the office every day. That's business at a high level. So sales is my expertise right now, but it's a much bigger opportunity in my eyes to just perform.
I love that. I think that it's really wise for you at your age, wise old Nathan here at 35, to be in that environment. And I think that, yes, working from anywhere and being, like world traveler
Digital
or
nomad.
digital nomad or laptop, warrior or whatever the tagline is. That's all well and good and sexy. I think back to my journey starting in 2009 when I got around sales and leadership and recruitment and personal development and professional development and speaking and training and all the things. And it's like, if I wasn't physically in that environment, like if I hadn't attended those events, been around those people, taken those notes, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am as a leader and a thinker, if I didn't, put myself in that kind of incubator. And I think that one of the dangers for Gen Zs is that they are sort of used to DIYing everything and YouTubing a video. I mean, my stepson, he's self-taught. He'll be 17 in September. So he's technically a Gen Z on the younger side. And I mean, he taught himself like every instrument. And I'm like, it's awesome that he can play all these instruments, but I'm like, bro, you need to go join a band because you'll learn about teamwork and leadership and conflict. And, oh, this guy wants to be the lead singer. He's the hot shot and this person's the drummer. And, so it's like, I'm a little worried that Gen Z folks, Gen Zs are not like physically having enough human interaction. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it makes it brings two interesting points up. First one, for me, moved into a house by myself for the first time when I was 17, and that comes with its own set of maturing. And, like I can sit down at a restaurant by myself and have a meal alone and not think twice about it. Right. Like It's funny on both sides how like some people rely so heavily upon that interaction, on that end of things. But also like for me, when I first got into sales, it was fully remote, like as a remote closer. And I was setting my own meetings some too. And I remember one day, this is towards the tail end of this last role, right before I joined the firm that I'm with now. And I was sitting there thinking about what I'm currently doing. The Masters is on. So it's like early April. I'm in my slippers, making my sales calls, still doing 100, 150 dials. And it just hit me. I was like, has anyone ever really gone from good to great in their slippers? Like, no one goes from good to great in their slippers. So you need to get out and you need to be active. You need to be in the community. Like you need to be doing things that are live in person, building those skills. So that plays a huge part in that decision for me. Like now I'm in the office every single day. And even they're like, well, we could do this like hybrid option. I'm like, I love coming to the office. Same. Like I love knowing I even picked the desk. We have a big glass door to walk onto the sales floor. And rather than picking the desk like in the corner, I even chose to take the desk right in front of the glass where my back is to it, just knowing that, hey, people are going to be walking by. And if I'm sitting here dicking around and the company president's walking by or anyone's walking by, founders, everyone's going to know that you're dicking around. So like that pressure of being in the office, I say pressure, but it's more so of just like motivation, I would say. It's been massive for me, and I got to get up and I got to shower and go to the gym and, come in prepared. It's just a totally different thing than just like working and living from home. And yeah, I think there's a
super smart, Colby. I mean, it's physics, right? An object in motion tends to stay in motion. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. And people think that if they can get themselves to feel a certain way, then they'll do a thing. But motion creates emotion. It's not the other way around, right? It's not that emotion creates motion. The activity, the motion, the doing the thing and having the power is what makes things move and make things roll. So for you to put yourself in those environments and then even within the environments, be intentional about which part of the room you're in, what the optics are, kind of the audio visual, that's very, very smart. And I'm not surprised that you're, attuned to that and keen to that. And I think that Gen Zs need to, I mean, they've cracked the code on the fact that some of the ridiculousness of like commuting and and cubicles and, you know, the pizza party and like some of the corporate America
Yeah.
nonsense, of course. Let's keep busting that up. But if you're just remote all the time, I mean, that's how they handle prisoners, you know, as they put them in solitary confinement. You know, you don't want to do that with your career and with your creative energy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't agree more. That's why even, you know, even now when we talk about, or some people that I work with bring up being remote, and I'm like, no desire to go back to that. And I think that's a big part of, you know, what I believe a lot of people around my age need more of is like the encouragement that like the easy path isn't necessarily the one that you want to take, because there is so many different opportunities out there right now. There's more, just access to information is what I see so much of these days that people talk about. It's like the biggest revolution of all time has just been the internet, and less of what it shook up of like time on our phones or all of that stuff, but more so just overall access to information has totally changed the game, and it gives you a lot of input, makes it kind of hard to figure out, well, what's my output, what's my like situation going to become. And I think everyone needs to know, it's like, you just kind of backtracking, for me, what helps so much is like having a situational awareness, just like you're talking about now, kind of knowing what I want, and realizing that like for what I wanted, it's not as simple as like I just wanted to get out, get a good job, pray to God they pay me six figures in one day. When I have kids, whatever, we can travel, they could go to private school, wherever. Just knowing that what the game I wanted to play was different, it was going to take a different set of rules almost to get there, right? So being as lucky as I have been to land at this company now is literally exactly what I could have asked for, because I mean, I'm making good money. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're paying me well. I'm busting my ass to work. However, even if I wasn't, because funny enough, when I came to this company, the goal and my interview with them was to be the founder's executive assistant.
Oh, wow.
Or personal assistant.
Wow.
So I was like, look, I'll make $30,000 a year, $25,000 a year to work under this 9-figure entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I will do this throughout my 20s, because I'm not here to, you know, just make 100K or 150K, right? Like, when I knew that playing by that set of rules would ultimately tee it up that by the time you get to 30, your perspective, your education, your skill set is so much broader and so much more advanced that it actually makes it feasible and possible to go out and hit bigger goals, to have exits from companies. All theoretical things I would like to have, but again, it's just options, right? Like, if you know what you kind of want to pursue, you need to play by a set of rules in the interim to actually give you the best shot at making that happen. Like, if you want to do some of the things I'm talking about now, the best place for you likely isn't going to be just like going through university, getting your first corporate job, because they're going to salary you $80K a year, and then just kind of like jumping down the rabbit hole. It's like, get a good solid mentor, a good solid company, go a more unconventional route to gather skills. Like, it's just kind of understanding what it is you want, and then trying to make sure that everything you're doing now is optimizing for that, rather than just what everyone else is currently saying you need to think or do.
I love that, man. I think that you need to keep banging that drum. You know, I'm like just young enough to be semi-relevant to your generation. You know, I think I've got a few more years of that. Well, one, we'll all age together. So, but I think that there's this interesting pressure, or false expectation, and maybe it's rooted in immediate gratification society. You know, I grew up at kind of right the cusp of the internet. You know, I was coming of age. My millennial counterparts can relate to this. You know, when we remember in our childhood, pre-internet, pre-cell phone, pre-device, and then post, you know, social media, all those things. So we're kind of this interesting hybrid of like, we know life before it and life with it, life without it, life with it. Your generation, particularly the younger, like my stepson Gavin, it's all they know, right? I mean, they've always had a device in their hand, so they've seen the world through this filter, right? And I think it's created an expectation that things of worth and value come quickly, because DoorDash brought it to you within 30 minutes, and the microwave had it cooked, and your cell phone. I mean, think about how small of an attention span, like with kicking off these podcasts, I've gotten, I guess people would call it feedback, but it's more like flack or criticism. Man, your episodes are really long. I'm like, yeah, because if I'm going to have a meaningful conversation, it's going to take a couple hours. Mm. I mean, if not, we're just talking bullshit, like topsoil buzzwords that any other podcast, any other content creator will regurgitate. But to really start to work through the layers and like get in the space together, it takes time. I mean, you can't do that in under an hour. You really can't. So I think like people that are marrying together the modernization, the cutting edge of technology, be it AI or social media, but preserving and underpinning it with timeless truths around relationships and what it really takes to plant a seed, cultivate that seed, and yield a harvest, and understanding that process is really important. And I think that you're approaching that really well, because yes, you're making great money and you are and have what I call hashtag no kids, right? Which is, I mean, you're killing it and you got no kids, so you don't have to pay for cavities.
Anything.
I was telling you before we went live, you know, my wife yesterday, I was having a good day. I was like, we're killing it, like sales coming in, like let's go. And then she hits me with, yeah, I went to the dentist. Judah has 3 cavities and needs to get 2 crowns. That's $800. Amelia's going to need braces next year. I'm like, damn, you know, taking the wind out of my sails. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying, like, you're in a season where you have 8 years left in your 20s. What you're going to be able to learn and develop is far greater than the money that you're earning, and you're making great money. So then it's like bet, you know, like I'm gonna stack this cash and learn. I heard it this way, and I think you'll probably relate to it. You learn in your 20s, you earn in your 30s, and you live in your 40s. Mm-hmm. And I love that, because I was like, okay, I'm going to take my 20s to learn. And I just was a student. I took the notes. I went to the seminars. I put myself in those opportunities. And then now in my 30s, particularly the second half of them, the earning is starting to really, like, okay, I could really see how this could go to millions and millions of dollars, what we've built here with my core. And then I'd like to maybe live a little in my 40s, you know, and not be in the core of child rearing. So it sounds like you've got good thinking around like how long things take and the season that you're in. How did you come up with that? Did you have wise parents? Do you have a background? Like, you seem to just kind of have a good take on life. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it came early age. My granddad was very influential in my life and a very wise person. But we would have these sort of conversations and it became kind of the norm for us. But he also opened me up to a lot of points of just understanding that money is not this thing that just buys you the bigger house, the bigger boat. You know, it's not really a personal thing unless you make it, you know, like it's awesome to, live, buy yourself the house of your dreams, drive the car that, you know, your heart desires to drive, travel to the places you want to see. And that's awesome. You know, don't get me wrong. Like if it was, everything was just for you and your family, I think that is enough justification. You don't have to have a desire to do other things. Right. But my granddad just showed me a lot of what he did. You know, he had enough money to set himself up, set his family up, and then set up me, you know, essentially too, even as his grandchild, like saw the extension of that, but also just things throughout the country, you know, and different communities and organizations that he could support. When you see it from that angle, and you understand, well, like, hey, if I have the capabilities or the desire to do it for myself, how far could I go if I did it for myself and for the purpose of helping other people? Right. Not only does that require more, you know, more capital, more effort to generate that sort of impact, but it's more motivation overall to just stay true to what you're looking to do. So I would say that was really big for me in originally teeing up this whole thing, but also just again knowing that it really is just what I want, right? Like I think that whole it is enough justification if you just want to do it for yourself. That's what America is really built on. Is like, yes, helping each other, of course, but the land of opportunity. There's people. I think people forget this. Like in our country, as a white male who was raised here and brought up here, the status quo, so to say, would be that for me to kind of just go out and do my thing out of just servantry of me and my family, regardless of where I end up professionally, would almost be considered like selfish. However, there's people that come to this country from another country that were never given the chance to choose what to study, what job to have, no cars, no nothing. You're just going to own nothing, and that's going to be fine for you. That come here and they're given that first opportunity to just do something for themselves. And it's so liberating that I don't think that we should lose that, right? Like regardless of where you come from, you should have every right to do something for yourself. And if that's it, in my opinion, that's enough justification to go out and do exactly what
that's
your heart
interesting.
desires.
So you're sort of saying it sounds like a combination of gratitude. So you're saying Jim Rohn would talk about America. He would say America's easy. There's a reason why people are trying to pour into our country. You don't really have border crisis in Poland, or wherever. I'm not going to knock another country. I'm just saying there's not like a lot of people trying to get into these places that are not
not the way they come here.
No, right. So if you were born in America, you've already won the lottery. I mean, even if you just do the math, you've got 8 billion people on the planet and 350 million in the United States. I mean, the odds of you ever being able to be here, particularly born here, you've hit the jackpot. I mean, you have incredible odds that are in your favor just by being here.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that you have an attitude of gratitude around being American, having access to the American dream, but you don't let that hold you back from somebody that maybe came here, is a minority, an immigrant, and is like getting theirs. Like they're like, look, I'm going to make my family successful and I'm going to start my business. And I think that whether it's white guilt or American guilt, it's like, that can mess you up because you're like, how do you balance the gratitude and the fact that there's privileges and there are, and I kind of have this in common, right? We have like RDBF, resting douchebag face. I think it
classic.
I made that up, but just like people will assume a thing. Well, okay, here's a good opportunity for us to share our origin story and how we met one another. And I think it actually speaks to what you were saying earlier about putting yourself in these environments, going to these events, kind of just like putting yourself out there. Because you and I met at a pitch contest, right? We met in a co-working space where they were doing like a Shark Tank style pitch contest. And we had to go up and speak in front of people, right? Like that's not super fun. I mean, you and I have a kind of a knack for it, and we met in the bathroom, right? And I remember thinking, I'm going to give this guy the benefit of the doubt because he might be thinking the same thing about me. But I wonder if he's a douchebag. Like, I just wonder. Like, he might be, he might not be. It's 50-50 chance, And then you went up and you present. I was like, okay, this guy's legit. Like, he's really polished, really put together. And then as we got talking more, I was like, this is a good kid, a good dude. I like this guy. And we've since built a relationship the last couple of years. So I guess what I'm getting at is, and I'd love to hear your point of view. Maybe you didn't think the same of me, but I just wondered, like, I wonder if this guy is the real deal or not.
Well, no, I mean, like I think again, just talking about Dev, like kind of, I'm just not one to tell you how to live your life, right? So I think that everyone who is kind of portraying or pressing what they think the world should be like on other people need to take more time to worry about their own shit.
Right.
Right. Like, I just don't think that it's my place to say that every guy who makes $1 million a year should be floating the guy that, isn't doing anything for himself or his family, or giving money even internationally to people that are less fortunate. Like, is like, if you were listening to this right now, you'd be like, well, how could you not say that should be the standard? Well, because that's just not our standard, right? The what we're built on here is you get to lead your life how you want, as long as you're not putting anyone else in harm's way. Like, I don't know if do you bleep out any, like, if I say fuck, like, will you beep it
No,
out?
you can
Okay,
say
so
it. Yeah.
I had this thing that I came up with like a year or two ago.
The way you said that.
I was just curious if you did.
If I say fuck.
Yeah.
No, it's cool, man.
I realized, like, just looking at the way everything was going in the world, I'm like, it's really quite simple. Bad people of bad character doing bad things fucks it all up.
Right.
We really don't have that many problems. It's genuinely just bad people of bad character doing bad things, and it's going to fuck it up for everyone else. So as long as you aren't that,
Right.
a bad person doing bad things to other
Right.
people, it's your choice what you do with your money.
Right.
And so for me, I'm not going to press upon anyone else. You have to do that a certain way. And, kind of back to what we were talking about and like how we met and what we did, at that time, I also felt that just about anybody was cooler than me. Like, anyone who was in the game doing business the way like you were, you were like cooler than me. You knew more about this game than me. So I really just remember like getting a chance to go to that. It was a huge deal for me, right? Like, I am spending the week ahead of it, the 2 weeks ahead of it, working on the whole script of like what I'm going to present. You're only on stage for like 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. I'm putting together the slide decks. I'm pulling the data of like our revenue and how much profit we were doing, how many people have come through, going through the expenses. What are the main expenses every summer? And it was a big deal for me to be there. But just like when we first met, it was like a cool thing where it was like, I'm in my sports coat putting on a show. Like, this is the biggest moment of my life. And you're over here like in a jean jacket and Vans, like a casual Wednesday. Like, yeah, I just fucking signed up. I'm here, whatever. I'm going to do my thing.
I cool guide it. Like,
yeah. So I really was just, it kind of rubbed off on me too, right after we met, because I just thought it was cool. So yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's not every time I get a chance to meet someone like yourself and kind of be in that world again, I just don't really have a driving factor of like why it is that you do what you do. I like to look at what it is. I think there's nobility in having a why. Like, I think you should have that, but again, I'm not here to be the one to tell you like if you don't.
You're hitting on
that's
a
problem.
lot of topics, man. I want to press in on some of them. I believe that we live in a fallen world, so put less savory. We live in a fucked up world, right? And that is as real as it gets. And any Christian, any believer, if the basis of your belief, the core of your belief, is not that we live in a fallen world and we're born in sin, then your whole approach, in my opinion, will be off. And it's a really hard concept to grapple with, because yes, people are great, and yes, people have good in them, but they're not born good. And all you need to know or do to learn that is have children. Like, just go have children. If you do not have children, then you do not know what I'm talking about. If you do have children, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because you will see these beautiful, sweet, innocent monsters that you're like, who taught you this? Was it me? It must be me. And it's like, well, then how did I learn it? Right. And it's generation after generation after generation. So we are all walking paradoxes. We are all living this life that is a series of contrasts. So the fact that we do live in a fallen world, you approach it differently. And it's a weird line to draw, because on one hand, yes, you want people to be able to live their lives as they so choose. I believe there are absolute truths, that there are laws of the universe, and that if we leave people entirely up to their own set of thinking, particularly younger people, like children, not saying like, 10, 15 years younger, but like kids.
Mm-hmm.
Kids should not be able to make certain decisions about the rest of their lives,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, if you can't get a tattoo at 18 and you can't drink till you're 21 and you can't go to Enterprise or Hertz and rent a damn car until you're 25, you probably shouldn't be able to change major things about your anatomy before that, right? I mean, that's a whole nother ball of wax and not the purpose of this podcast, but it's sort of remarkable / terrifying how we're sliding the scale of choice lower and lower and earlier, and we're robbing the innocence from a child at earlier and earlier stages. And I'm saying that to say that, like, I think you're kind of pinpointing that fine line between influencing others and allowing people to be who they are. And it's an interesting grapple to be an influencer, to be somebody that people look up to, but also be like, do you, boo boo? So is that kind of what you're speaking to a little bit?
Yeah, well, kind of the same way that you just said. There's some things that are truths, right? I think I continue to find those out for myself all the time about just some things that you need to keep tight, right? Because the same way that I said, like, if you're the guy who just wants to make money to get what's yours and buy the bigger house, take care of your kids, and y'all are going to go spend every summer in Bora Bora, like, that's okay. Now, the catch-22 with that is, traditionally speaking, the habits or the way that gentleman might lead his life would look kind of like this. That same guy is in his office 10 to 12 hours a day, right, eating trash food, not in the best shape, not showing up for his kids, missing like the Saturday baseball games. Traditionally, someone like that too usually might come with some more temper. I don't know if temperamatic is like a word, but just like a different emotional control level.
Temperamental.
Yeah, everyone that I know that has a really good mindset, like a bulletproof mindset, and standard and charisma, like exercises and takes care of all these different things. So there's more of a trickle down, right? Like, where I can say that, but then you want to look at the whole situation. I feel like similar to that, those same truths that really I believe in, like having your purpose. Like, if you're going to go out and make a bunch of money and take care of yourself, you should find a way to create an impact bigger than yourself.
Right.
In that process, you should take care of your body. You should be aware in your relationships and how you treat people, because that's the blueprint, and the system is seeing all this stuff come together. So,
and this was instilled in you from your grandfather, your mother's father.
Yeah, so a fair amount from my grandfather, more so on the worldly side of things. I learned a lot of the interpersonal and day-to-day habits and lifestyle things from Brian, who I worked with at Grit.org, the startup I was in. That mainly came from there. So it comes from two different places in a way, but of course, again, all the people I've networked and gotten to meet and hang out with. It's just that, again, I don't think that I don't believe that any one lifestyle trumps anything these days. I know plenty of people that are dirt broke as shit, can't afford to go play golf with me or have a meal or do jack. I like you said, I don't have kids and I don't spend money willy nilly, but like, you can damn sure believe I could afford just about whatever I want, within reason. And they're, for maybe like happier than me wouldn't be the right word, but let's just say, they don't have to like live in the fire or nothing. It's a simpler life, and they're very content with that and happy. So there's just no right way to live, right? Like, you have to go out and figure it out for yourself. But like, again, I'm not here to tell you exactly like why to live your life, or as much like what to do with it. But I do believe there is like a how basis, you know.
So what I'm hearing you say, and I like again, I always try to like frame this like this is a conversation, right? This is convo number 007. Yeah, what it was like
007.
Yeah, 007, right? So I want these to be as conversational and not just pepper you with questions. Because I'm discovering real time with you these thought patterns and these concepts, and kind of trying to weave it all together. So here's like a disclaimer, world according to Nathan. I believe that we get to choose about half of what we are, of who we are, of why we are, of how we are, when we are, where we are, us. The other half, I believe, is sort of predetermined by our creator. And I think that if people would spend more time, and myself included, I'm guilty of this, speaking to and with the creator about his creation, we would probably gain insights about ourselves that are important. I like to think of it like my iPhone here. I wouldn't go to Microsoft to learn about this iPhone. I would go to Apple because they created it, right? It's a byproduct, it's an output of their creation. So I have found the more I go to God and the more I spend time in his word and in community with other believers, the more I learn about myself, either specifically me or like mankind, the human race, and both. So if under that thesis, that premise that you get about 50%, you get to create. You can work out, you can make the money, you can choose the career, you can choose your life partner, you can choose to have kids, not have kids, live in this country, live in that. You get a lot of choice. But then there's this other half that is sort of like just discovery. It's unearthing, right? It kind of goes back to your sales call. It's like if you approached every call with just trying to jam down their throat what you're trying to sell them, or pound through their skull your product, service, opportunity, you would get something. You know what I mean? You'd land something. Even a blind squirrel finds an acorn. But you're probably really good at what you do because you unearth and you discover and you peel back the layers to find out what they really are looking for, right? What they really want. And then you create rapport and connection throughout that phone call. And in 32 minutes, end to end, $17,000 you unearth, in that kind of like, hey, what's up? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to take a side note to that, but you, where were you? You can.
I'll land the plane on that thought process. So I'm really enjoying talking to you, Colby, because you are ahead of your time, in the sense that you're far more self-aware than most 22-year-olds. You have a confidence that you should have. You have a lot of natural faculties. You have a lot of receipts you can actually pull from and say, well, I've got a great girlfriend and I have a good family and I take care of myself and I make money and I'm a good dude. And, like there's a lot of, and I know that you're not perfect and I'm a super flawed person. So I can relate to that side of things too. But I'm enjoying this because I can just see the like raw material that you're putting together. And it's exciting to think about your trajectory. I think about where you'll be at 35. And I'm like, shit, you're going to trump me. Like you're going to be way further along because I wasn't this dialed in at your age. So I guess what I'm trying to like drill down, right? And it might be a good segue into the relationship with your father is you have this grandfather who instilled certain aspects of your identity that is part of your legacy, your lineage. And then you have these mentors that you've gathered, be it, professionally,
so
through
many
family,
mentors.
And you've been intentional about that, right? Yeah. Like you've gathered those people, you've made them part of your board of directors, which is in and of itself a nugget, to be intentional about that and to do that forever. And yet I'm really curious about like how you take this identity, this who factor, half you were born with, half was just sort of there, and then half you've chosen and made good choices and are continuing to. Not that they were all perfect. I'm sure you have all kinds of mistakes in there too. And then you're starting to connect it to this purpose, to this why, to this drive, to this mission. And then the what's and the hows and the whens and the wheres, those outputs are showing up in your bank account. They're showing up in your relationships. They're showing up in your health. And I think if people could just get the sequence of things in order, right? And they can kind of put the who, then the why, then the what, then the how, then the when, then the where. See, what I've done is I've worked really, really hard on that. If there's anything that I can like stand firm in, it's that I've done the work, and I continue to, in that space. And it's why I can go up in a jean jacket and Vans and just talk without a deck and win the competition. Right? Just to set the record.
Yeah, just to be clear, Nathan did win. It was a dead giveaway. As soon as you did your thing too, I was like, damn it, what a fucking waste of time.
No, I remember thinking very much so, because you went first, and I was like, if I don't win, it'll be because that dude.
Yeah. No, I was stoked still. I was very, just to take that back for a second, I was very stoked on the whole process and was glad to see Nathan.
And I don't want to sound, it was a little pitch contest, whatever. It was a handful of companies there. But I know the order of things. I know the sequence. I know the way the brain works. So when I sit in front of the judges, I knew that I was going to lead with who we are, then why we exist, then what we do, and a little bit about how we do it. And the continuity of that connected, that then they were like, well, we got to, because, and then like we have that guy. Yeah. And I was like, shocker. Yeah. So I'm watching you real time in this episode, particularly because combined we'll have about 4 hours of conversation in front of these microphones, connect to those beliefs. And it's just fun to be part of your journey, man, and watch you do it. So I want to commend you for that more than anything, because I'm like, bro, you're 22. Like, I'm sitting here, I'll be thinking like you're 32. And then I'm like, wait, no, he's 22. He's not 32. So you really are a Gen Z trailblazer, man. I mean, you're pioneering through with a machete, and you're cutting this path, carving this path. And I think you're doing it wisely by surrounding yourself with people that have maybe been around. It's not their first rodeo. They're doing the deal. But you're finding your approach, your knack, and it's awesome, man. It's awesome to experience it and be part of it. So,
It sounds so good when you say that too. Gen Z Trailblazer like just rolls off. Like I think that's a to give some background on that and kind of talk about why I felt like that.
Yeah, because we just formed we're forming your entity, right? You're working with Laura right now to get so you've had that brand and that mentality. You just hadn't put it into a formal entity until recently.
So I just had my core with Nathan file my LLC for Gen Z Trailblazers, and really the idea kind of has come about the last like 6, 7, 8 months or so, because a lot of what you're talking about now, like I feel like I'm just living like a new life every couple months. Like there's just like a whole new version and changes and thought processes. But, when I was in high school and I was looking to get out and kind of like just, start making my next steps, I was applying to colleges. I needed to get a letter of recommendation. And my personal finance teacher, senior year of high school, was a decorated veteran, was a really just super solid guy. So I was like, this is the first person I could have write me a letter of recommendation. And that was his opening line. I've actually been meaning to see if I could find it in my laptop where he says, word for word, like Colby is a Gen Z Trailblazer. Fantastic. And I just thought that was such a bar, right? Like that's such a good line. Yeah. But it is a lot of what we're talking about now is like just now wanting to find a way that if there's any way to make this easier on the next person, I would love to be able to do that, because I definitely struggle. And as you know, with what you do too, like it's hard to advocate for people to take the path of least resistance, knowing that it's probably the best and it's going to generate the best outcome and the closest thing to what you want at the end of the road.
Or you're saying take the path of most resistance.
Yeah. Most resistance. Okay. My apologies.
Yeah, no, I was tracking with you, but I think you were saying like take the
you don't want to take the most difficult route. Exactly.
Not take the path of least
resistance.
Okay.
So
it's hard to trailblaze. I mean, you're not. It's interesting you use that imagery. By the way, I have to just say this because the Bible says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. And I've always been convicted of that scripture and empowered by it because our giftings are similar. You have better hair than me, but it's close
I don't know.
Second,
I like the little curls.
But I have used my spoken word for good, and I've used it for destruction. Destruction in my marriage at times, destruction. Not saying like finitely destructive, but like in a fight. You know what I mean?
It
Like
can happen.
shit, just like totally ruined that weekend. So it's really like if you can garner and harness the tongue, you can garner and harness all kinds of power. That's interesting that teacher spoke life into you and dropped a bar, like a label, and it stuck with you to the point where you're forming a formal entity, a limited liability company in the state of Florida because of that line. And I think that that's neat too, because as generations come, next from from a millennial to a Gen Z to a Gen Alpha, it's like we got to be careful how we label people for better or for worse. So that was pretty interesting. But back to you in the studio.
Yeah. So I feel like it's a cool name, right? It's like a cool title, and I think I think a big thing that what I really try to get people to understand and what I try to share is like thinking about what's it like now, right? Like to think that is it all just sunshine and rainbows, like making money and your bills are taken care of and whatever. No, it's not, right? However, it feels really good and it's really cool, like to look back on what life used to be like and what it's like today, right? I can say that I remember being, 14, 15, 16, where I felt like 4 to 5 days a week for me were just bad days, not good days that you just didn't really want to exist. And now I can look at my life and say that I might have 1 to 2 of those days a week, maybe sometimes less, so that is like, I think the whole message is it's not about the simplicity, or well, vice versa. It's not about like all the massive complexities of what you can do, how you should do it, why you should do it, when to expect it to happen, and more so trying to get to the point where you can say something like that about yourself, like say that you were living your life more than 75% of the time, wishing it wasn't yours and unhappy about it, to being in a place where you wake up.
You're not saying this generally. This was your experience. You felt that way, Colby.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
What do you think informed that? Like why were you in a state and in a season where you were down and out the majority of the time?
I think it was just a lot of changes that came at an early age, and what kind of left me to kind of just leave a lot of what I knew behind, and create like a whole new life in a way, like at a young age, a lot of things changing.
You had told me a story, and I really hope that we can capture that story in this moment, because I think it gives people a insight into who you are that is probably not what people would think at a glance. You had talked to me about living in North Carolina. You have 2 brothers and a sister, so there's 4 of you. You're the third or the second?
I'm the third, so I have 2 older brothers.
The third. So you have 2 older brothers and a younger sister. And I believe it was 5th grade that you were in school and your mother picked you up in the middle of the school day. Mm-hmm. Were you the first one to be picked up, the last one? Like, how many other siblings were in the car at that point?
Yeah, it was just me and my sister at the time being. So yeah, I was like the first one to be like, let's go.
So talk to me about that moment in time, because it is a pretty raw, real moment, I think, defining, rupture in your life, right? That you could have, and it sounds like you did for a season, get pretty upset about it, get pretty angry about it. But you eventually converted it into good. So what happened in your life in 5th grade in North Carolina?
Yeah, and I'm glad we're coming back around to it, because I think that it definitely does share a lot about what shapes you, and kind of where I'm at now. And I like telling the story, because again, it's a part of what makes me, and I think maybe if we quit doing so much measurement of like whose situation is better or worse, but just accepting that that person had to go through something for better or for worse, it's their story, right? And so this is mine. And really, my parents had been divorced since I was young, 4 years old or so, living in North Carolina. I was originally born in Atlanta. So parents were together for maybe a year once we moved to North Carolina, but things didn't shake out. And truth be told, it was pretty casual. Like I always thought, it sucked. Of course, like the hard conversations were never fun to be young with divorced parents. However, it just kind of was whatever, right?
Just,
like
it became the new norm.
Yeah, weekends with dad and, weeks with mom and, great mother. So she took great care of us all the time. And yeah, so it just started to boil over. Things got too hot to a point where, like there was restraining orders and, police were taking my dad out of basketball games as a kid. And, you're witnessing all of these things and, just screaming arguments amongst
in
the
public
parents.
places.
Yeah, just embarrassing for sure. So it started to become more of a challenge. Like I remember I got in my first fight in third grade for a kid asking me why my parents broke up. Like probably didn't even know what the word divorce was. Like he just like asked that.
He's probably just innocently asking. He's like, "Hey, why aren't you?" You're like,
yeah, no, it's exactly how it happened.
Curb stop.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's basically exactly how it happened. But so my mom just got to a point, I guess, where, it's still not even that side of the story is not mine to tell. This is about the only thing that I know based in facts is I was in fifth grade and my mom comes to school and she checks me out. Mind you, my school is really small. So there was 30 kids in the entire fifth grade.
Oh, wow.
400 kids.
It's a rural town in North Carolina.
400 kids, kindergarten through 12th grade.
What's the name of the town?
Highlands, North Carolina. Yeah. So western tip of the state. But she comes and pulls me out and, just kind of give you a vibe of the area in the class, being that small. Like that's like, small town feel. So everyone knows everybody. And we get pulled out of class and my mom has me and my sister there at the front office. And she's just like, hey, we're going to go on an adventure. Like I'm going to take you back by the house, pack some things that you need, plan for the weekend, right? Enough to get you by for a 3 or 4 day period. Cool. I'm checked out early. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
No concerns really. So we jump in the car, we go and pick my brothers up, which I found to be odd. We picked them up from their school because they went to a different school than me at the time. And when we did that, that was where some questions started to be raised, right? My brothers are a little bit older than me. Chase was in the front seat. And as I recall it, that was kind of one clear sign that something was up is he obviously knew something was going on at that time. He was older than me, so my mom had kind of kept him in the loop, but he's just sitting in the front. And as my brother, Joey, my second brother, starts asking all these questions about like, where are we going? What are we doing? What's happening? Are we going to be back for my basketball game next week? And my mom is just kind of mute on all the topics, like doesn't really have an answer, can't really tell us what's going on. And I see Chase in the front who's not chiming in or has any say in anything, just kind of like staring blankly at the road. Started to kind of realize something was up. And my mom did mention that like we were going to be leaving just for a couple of days, but lo and behold, 8-9 hours later, after just being in the car, kind of quiet ride, we end up in my grandparents' front doorstep in Florida, and we kind of just let it lie. Like my mom said, "Hey, just keep it low key, kind of what we're doing." I'm like figuring some stuff out right now, and I didn't even know what to say. I was just like, "All right, whatever," like we're just disappearing, no big deal. Well, till it became that we were disappearing, and it definitely was a big deal.
So we were in hiding
till we actually were. My mom sat us down 2-3 days later, just me and the brothers. Sister was really young at the time, and she basically sat us down and just said, "Look, things have gotten to a point with your father that I'm like, I don't feel like that's the best place for us to be. And we won't be going back. The lifestyle, the friends, the things you grew up with, basically that life is like over. We're going to be staying in Florida. We won't be going back. You're not allowed to tell anyone where we are, what we're doing, who we're with. Everybody, just tell them you're okay, but they don't need to know anything about what's going on." And I'm 9 at the time. I think I'm 10 at the time, actually. But either way, 9, 10, right in that age range at 5th grade. And that was the start of kind of what became what we were talking about before of just this spiral, a steep one too. I think that it started to progress after just, a year after that happening, but in a blink of an eye, your entire life has taken away everything as you know it. And
it's so abrupt. Yeah. Because if you think of like moving in general, right? We moved down here 2.5, almost 3 years ago, and we told people, we said goodbye. We like built up to the moment and then did it, so for it to be like a full pulling of the carpet all at once at that young age, I mean, it's no wonder that now everybody grew up really, really fast, and you're dealing with a whole new landscape, a whole new game, as you put it, with a new set of rules. And at that time, it sounds like you became essentially angry, and then that spiraled into poor behavior. Like, what type of? I mean, you're kids, so you're probably not like, selling drugs.
Like no, not
leading
quite.
a gang, but like, what type of, like, are you having like outbursts? Are you popping off? Like, what were you doing?
Yeah, so it really became for me just being a male, especially, like, love my mom, of course. And I think everyone who has like a good mom like has such a special place for them. But at the same time, like, love sports, and that was kind of my dad, like the fun guy, a lot of basketball and fishing and throwing the football and go to the pool, do all the fun stuff all the time. And so it was really hard to lose that because I definitely was my father's son at the time. So it became this whole, I think really, as I reflect on it, like two things, really just not having that anymore, feeling like the person that I really idolized was taken away from me, resentment towards my mother, and then just like no grounding, literally no grounding. Like I know when we talk about it, at home, when we reflect on these times, because I'm very, very close with my siblings and my mom, we talk about how like we've had the debate of like, were we there for each other and were times really okay? And I remember one time it came up and I was like, hell no. Like it was terrible, like through and through. The whole thing sucked.
Like, you threw out reality.
Yeah,
kind of like,
I know. Well, my mom was like, well,
because the headliner was like, family moves and pulls together through awkward, tough times. Right. You're like, bullshit. I'm going to call bullshit on this.
Yeah, long term, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
In the year, though,
far enough timeline.
Right, in the year that we spent living in Ponte Vedra, because that's ultimately where we moved to after getting out of my grandparents' house, moved to Ponte Vedra. And yeah, so it was a lot of anger, a lot of just destruction, self-destruction, destruction of things in the home, destruction of relationships in the home. Just overall, anger is absolutely the number one way to put it. Just like fuming about everything. And it really became an interesting time too, because one thing I think that, we didn't talk about last time, that I think is a good point to bring up now, especially talking about being in Gen Z, being well-versed in what is actually going on with a lot of youth these days, is that I really just got to a point where like no one ever really knew what happened. And still to this day, a lot of people, even though I'm close with, still don't know really what happened. There's things that you just would never even want to tell anybody. That long story short,
you met here in this area after moving, or people from North Carolina that didn't understand what happened?
No, yeah. So just people in general, people I know that people that like are close with me or would know me that you really wouldn't want to talk about. But this was one of the things that we didn't bring up last time that I think is a good point of just, feeling the worst thing is to feel like you're kind of living two different lives, right? Like a lot of people I knew forever never really knew that I kind of had this baggage, or, at a really young age, like when I first moved to Florida, that all this was going on. Meanwhile, like they've just got me standing up in front of my new 5th grade class, telling them what my favorite sport is and where I'm from, like just totally, which was great that they did that. But like, obviously it was a total background
so it was
noise.
Perceived as though you made a normal, healthy move to the area. And, it's not as far as like witness protection program, but you're kind of like living in Winchesterton, Fieldsville, Iowa,
just so stoked.
under a new name.
Yeah.
I love basketball.
Right. And
but
so
you're really like, F this.
I think what it created is this duality of like feeling like you had to live, or I had to live like a separate life. So going through that, like I literally did, I lived two separate lives. I would go to school, and I always loved school in a way. I hated learning and doing all like history and whatnot, but the friends, the debauchery, like just all the, shooting spitballs at each other, whatever. Because I got acquainted, I made friends or whatever, and just kind of back pocketed that stuff for that time period.
So you had to be on while you were in school.
On,
and it was probably an escape in a sense. Like you got to kind of take a break from reality.
Yep.
But it wasn't healthy because you had to go back to reality at 3 p.m.
Exactly. So I started to notice this pattern, and it became something that I battled with for a long time. But I think that that's like a being as malleable as the young mind is. Like you sell yourself on that, and you make yourself okay with it. To be like, hey, I'm gonna live this life out here when I'm front facing to people and my peers that portrays me in this light and makes people think this way about me, and yada yada. But then I also I like in this life over here where I actually have to live with my actual current situation, I'm gonna live in shambles, because it sucks. Now granted, I do come from a background where like we had food on the table, we were okay, right? Like I was taken care of, but at the same time, like we were talking about earlier, knowing that my situation, like the number one thing in my life was my father, to have that taken away, you could imagine again the downfall that we're talking about now. So that became a battle, I would say, all the way through, I would say to present day, it could still be considered a battle of like,
let's keep talking about this relationship, because it sounds like you had a bit of a Disney dad, as they call it, right? That was providing good times. I don't think he'll listen. So my stepson's father is just like this, in the sense that we moved down here because he was living in Orlando. We were in Maryland. He's had a long distance relationship with his son for his whole life. We put his son on a silver platter and say, you can now live within a couple hours of him. And 6 months later, he moves to California. It's like, dude, and any excuse will do, like, oh, work or bullshit. Like you didn't prioritize. And I know that Gavin's going to have to process that and deal with that. And I'm sure he does. I mean, he's a smart kid and he's an intuitive kid, but later about your age is going to really, I think, amount, and go like, Dad, what the freak,
you get a little too smart.
Yeah, like what was that? Like you dipped my entire high school career when you were right there. So that's for another day. But how long? So you had this father that, especially in those early years, those first 10 years, the needs are more playful, having time doing boy things. You're not really like looking to your same-sex parent for like how to navigate the world as a man yet, right? They're not teaching you the things that a boy will need to know to become a man. So probably you had your father in a pretty good light, even if you saw him get dragged off,
definitely.
That's their fault. They misunderstood. Got you, Dad.
It was fine.
See you for the like milkshake later or whatever, right? Like, but how long was it that you were like, because your father eventually moved down here, right? Like, how long did you go without your father?
I've got another good story that we didn't bring up last time.
This is good stuff.
Gosh, man, because I think right now too, just to kind of retrace a lot of conversations we've been having recently and that I'm going through currently is like this whole third and fourth wind that I'm trying to catch right now, right? To like be in love with the process and live by what I'm here to talk about. Like I think I can talk about it, but at the end of the day, I still have to go out and do these things just like anyone else does. And it's hard, right? Whether you know the answers or not, like you still have to go out and do it. And I'm like trying to catch this wind right now to keep doing the thing and fighting the good fight. So it's funny, like going back to this and having these conversations, because I'm unearthing some characteristics that kind of stick with me to this day. But there's one that sends out like, how long were we apart? I remember being in Ponte Vedra and I had my little iPod, and this was when they first launched like if you had an iPod or if you had Wi-Fi, they were creating like cell phone apps.
Okay.
And so the rule was like, completely, disconnected from dad. Like you weren't allowed to text, call, email, complete disconnection from him. And I remember getting the app on my iPod, and we had probably been gone for like 3 to 4 months because we were in our first house we were in.
So you had gone 3 to 4 months with no contact with your father.
Well, it goes longer. So this occasion, I got the phone out or my iPod, and I can't remember if I memorized his number, if I stole it out of my mom's phone, whatever it was.
Try, Colby. This is tough.
And I take it and I like dial it, and I'm like sitting in the bathroom, like terrified if mom or someone's gonna catch me. And I remember dialing him, and he picks up, and I hear him. He's like, "Hello." Hello. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, I totally freeze. Like I don't even know what to say or like what direction to go in. And I remember just sitting there and like not even knowing how to open it up or do anything. And like 10 or 15 seconds later, like he like hangs up or whatever. And I just sit there and I'm like, like so conflicted and confused. But I think that, that again of like this kind of like, what happens behind closed doors became such a weight to carry, but it ended up being over a year. Well, not quite a year. Because again, I think, I'm doing this thing right now at the office. We have a program called SEAL. We had a program called SEAL Team Leadership. Now it's called True Path. It's from a Navy SEAL, total badass. Someone tried to rob him like a month or two ago, and his answer was no. Gun to him. He says, "Now give me your wallet." No.
No.
I mean, I've heard this story from him, right? So we're going through this thing right now with his coaching program because it's something I'll sell. Right. And we're going through all these questions and like fear of abandonment or like fear of what's the word? Insufficiencies or something. Okay. So you're not like good enough. Right. This kind of plays into it. It's like I remember at one point I was such a demon, that my mom just was like, fuck it. Like, you know what? You want to get out of here? Like, you want to go live with your dad? You want to like choose sides? Like, you make your answer, like your decision real simple. Like, she sat me and my brothers down and was like, look, your sister can't go, but if the three of you, any of you want to go and like live with your dad. She was
kind of over it. Like,
yeah, she was like, go do it. Now, she knew what would happen in the back of her mind. But she said, you could do it or whatever. And, I think that was probably around the first time I ended up calling him. I hadn't talked to him on the phone or done anything. And I ended up, doing that same thing, I think, through like my iPod and calling him and being like, hey, I've got like the best news ever. You're never going to believe it. And he's like, what? And I'm like, mom said like I can come back to North Carolina and just live with you. Like she's 100% down. She doesn't care. I can literally like pack my stuff back up and come on up there anytime and be good to go. Oh yeah, that's great news. And, let me like work on that. I got a couple things that I need to like look at and work on, but like, that's great. Like, let's do it, whatever. And then just like crickets, like nothing really happens and time goes on and, it just never happens. Right. So,
bro, I mean, this is tough stuff. I mean, you're talking about a complete upheaval of your life. As if that's not enough. In the aftermath of that, you're dealing with now rejection from both parties. So it's like, it's one thing if one parent and you can demonize the other, right? But because you're a young boy full of emotion and starting to have hormones and pre-puberty and like all the things that come with that just is a animal, you're then like, well, mom, you screwed my life up because you made this choice to come to the safe haven of your parents and like dip. And maybe there was a part of you that understood that, but probably not, probably not at 10, 11, 12 years old. And then your father doesn't have his shit together enough because it sounds like your mom created an environment up there that she was taking the brunt of it. And then he got to have all the good times and the fun. Right. So he could show up in those moments because they were short stints. Right. It was ball game, milkshake, movies, all kind of like almost, not to discount it, but it's kind of the equivalent of like babysitting or something versus like truly
like your fun uncle.
Exactly right. And then you're like, Dad, this just in, extra, heard all about it. Like, I'm coming up there.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, for sure. But he didn't really put it together to make that happen.
Yeah.
So then you got to deal with all that rejection, right? So you're like, rock hard place, Mom, Dad, which one of you were wrong? I hate you both. I love you both.
Yeah.
Shit, man. That's some serious stuff.
Yeah. It definitely just created I don't know, me and my mom had a really just like rocky experience. And kind of like we had talked last time we shot the episode is for me, I feel like that was kind of just a line where you turn a page at a young age to just kind of still did plenty of things and, was like a child, like with by the time we moved to Fernandina, which is ultimately where we ended up on Amelia Island, getting into surfing and spending my time fishing. And, then as, you grow up and you get into high school and your first drink, your first kiss, you have all these like things that happen, exciting, whatever. But I think the maturity level changed forever. And there was a piece of me that, we talk about that like childlike enjoyment of life and, naive nature that makes that even possible to experience such an exhilarating amount of enjoyment of life. That was like done,
ended that. That was killed. And then the challenge is too, you come into this affluent area here in North Florida and in Ponte Vedra and Amelia Island, and you're probably having to pretend like you're still innocent, like you're still hunky dory, like, yeah, let's go fishing. And like, you're like, fuck, like, so I keep thinking back to 11-year-old Colby, right? Which is just not that long ago either, right? I mean, you're talking, a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a lot of sense that you are beyond your years because you are beyond your years, right? I mean, you grew up, you had this rupture that adulted you. And that's when you were talking about calling your father from the iPod, talk about a cold call, dude. Right? I mean, it's no wonder that you're a beast on the phone. You had to make the gnarliest cold call of your life.
That was a scary one. I think reliving, because I've been like reliving some of my worst moments recently, trying to
process it.
Yeah, and also trying to not trying to downplay the current bad ones, right? Because like when bad things happen now, it's just not the same, to be honest. Like I haven't, my life is pretty damn good.
I hear you struggling with it in this moment, and I have that same struggle. It's kind of connected to some of the earlier sentiments, but life's a mixed bag, man, and it's like a dresser. You have different drawers, and they're not all bad and they're not all good. And what I've found in therapy and in like mental health, at least attempting to have it, and this is part of my therapy. Like there's a lot of your story. I'm like, oh, we can switch seats. You ask me the questions. I'll tell you what happened in my life at that age. So I can identify and relate more than I'd like to. But what I've found at whatever in my mid-30s is that I've got these drawers, and I used to mix them all, right? Like my pants were with my shirts or with my socks or with my underwear, and it seemed okay because it was all good. Like I knew that they ultimately were going to make up my outfit, my wardrobe. But I've learned to put them in their places, and I open that drawer and it's all the bad shit. You know what I mean? And I just look at it and I go, huh. And then I shut that drawer, and then I open up the good drawer and I'm like, that's some good shit in there. You know what I mean? Like that's my favorite shirt, or that's when I won the, state championship, or that's when I, had that high. I love those pants, man. And then I shut that drawer. And I think the grapple, the wrestle is trying to compartmentalize all that, right? And it sounds like you're in a journey and in a season and in a process right now, because every time I hear you talk about something negative, something painful, it seems that you have this pressure to automatically go to the positive. And that's probably how Colby rolls. You find something negative, you spend a moment with it, you're like, but look at the silver lining, look at the good. But I mean, what do I have to be upset about? And I would just encourage you, for whatever it's worth, man, to try to hold that space and just open the drawer and just look at it and be like, fuck you, Dad, love you, shut the door. You know what I mean? Yeah. Close it. Because if not, man, you will commingle. It's just like your personal finances and your business finances. I mean, you're starting this entity, right? You're going to learn, I should probably use my personal card for this and my business card for that. Don't commingle that. At the same time, contradictory statement here, you got to integrate it, right? You got to. So it's freaking wild, man. This thing called life.
I know. Well, that was like I was already ready to try and spin the whole spin it, to talk because there's different times where you're just really like, damn, that was like a low point, for sure. And I just don't really, I don't know, where I'm at now is different in terms of just a lot of things have been taken care of. I've checked a lot of boxes in the last 2-3 years, and just getting to the right place. And this is a really interesting take. What all of this is about now, that I think I've gotten a lot of clarity on recently, and I said it out loud to my brother over the weekend. We're having this whole heart-to-heart. I think I was telling you about before we sat down. It's like just this whole notion of like, again, all this stuff we're talking about isn't easy. It doesn't happen for you. You have to actively go out and create it and make it happen, and that is such a challenge. So I fall off just like anybody else. I am not in the gym every single day, 7 days a week at 5 a.m., asking who's going to carry the boats while I do 200 pull-ups, right?
David Goggins nonsense.
Yeah. So me and my brother, though, we're assessing our lives, and we're both like, yeah, I probably worked 60 hours last week. What else did you do? Nah. Nothing. Didn't go to the gym. Didn't do anything. Didn't do jack. I was just working the whole time or watching Dexter. And then,
but you said you finished, right?
Yeah, right.
That
finished the whole season.
That's when you know you're a high achiever, when you finish a show and you're like,
yeah,
finished.
Nice. Yeah.
I don't know. That's the point.
I say to my brother, though, I'm like, I've had this whole thought recently of like, how peaceful can I be? Like that has now become the ultimate goal, is because as I learn about personal finance, and now like I'm opening up a self-directed Auth IRA and jumping into a private equity investment right now.
Nice.
And that is a risky play.
Whitest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I know. Well,
jumping into a Roth.
Bro, I was at the bar the other night and I told someone,
it's the whitest male thing.
What do you do? I'm at a private equity firm. I do sales for a portfolio of our companies. Oh, they have a portfolio. They have a portfolio. What's in that? What sort of portfolio? I'm like, oh my God. Meanwhile, these are, never mind. I'm not going to knock anyone in any way. But
to Tony, our COO, my friend and colleague, because my son, he's got hair like you. He kind of looks like you. Actually, he's 6. And we were at Starbucks, and he's the sweetest boy, but he just looked like a finance bro. So I put my glasses on him, and I got videos of him saying, the NASDAQ is down 3 points right now. You got to get in. Like just all these like tech finance bros.
Yeah.
He was hilarious. And then he took the glasses and he put them like up in his hair. I got to show you the video.
That's how I like to roll.
Exactly. And it was like, it looks just like you.
Yeah.
Like
well, that is still me, right? Like I absolutely play the game. Like I talk like that. I am very much at this point, like a very, I'm just like a white collar dude. But point being is
pink and blue and purple and light blue color.
Yeah. This shirt's swagged
out. That shirt's sick, dog. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, I mean, come on. But awesome. It's like talking about the piece, right? As I'm getting ready to do this deal, I'm moving money in other ways as well. I've got I'm balancing long distance with my girlfriend right now. My mom is now an empty nester, which is kind of like giving me some added stress and responsibility of like making sure she's okay, staying in touch with her, just kind of like trying to keep her, just feel like I'm doing something for her. So there's all these moving parts again, just like every other person listening. I'm not independent of this. That's why I'm talking about though, is the goal has just become like, it's like, well, I've had really good confidence recently in terms of like, hey, I'm going to do just fine financially. That's no question. Learning
so you've checked that box, and that is stable.
And learning to play this game, right? But then it's now like, well, how at peace can I be, if I move $20,000 into numerous investments, how at peace can I be with what might happen to that money? Right. Okay, well, how at peace am I with the cash in the banker? Now, on the other side of things, like how at peace am I with like my current relationships? So when I say like how peaceful can I be in terms of just being relaxed, feeling like your mind isn't running at a billion miles per hour, feeling like you are in control. So just thinking about having that like peace, being able to like sleep at night and being able to live in all the moments. That's something I really struggle with, is just like living out all of the moments, whether it's like casual and out and about at the bar and hanging out there, or in the mundane day-to-day work, or just, watching a movie with my mom, like trying to just live in all those moments. I think that comes back to just having peace, because like what would be the opposite of peace is worrying about basically anything and everything except for what's right in front of you. And I'm so guilty of that. So I think that's been one of my biggest shifts recently, is like the confidence is still there, but also a sense of urgency, and also like being realistic of like, I also know like this shit doesn't just happen. And even if you get it, you got to keep it, you got to maintain it, grow it, all these things. But really more so just like, all right, well, in a perfect world, and I know just hear me out for a second. I know this is going to be very much like, let me paint you a picture. And if my life was like this, it'd be perfect, which, like is obviously never the truth. But yeah, if I felt I was smart enough to be confident in the investments I'm making, and knowing my money was multiplying itself, my active income is great and my bills are taken care of. I can travel, I can treat myself and those I love. I've got good relationships. I'm just doing a lot of the right things. And how much peace would that offer me? Okay, it would give me a lot of it. What if I tried to like mend these relationships, or just be more honest, be like more of my true self all the time? How much peace would that give me? Right. Kind of like following this hierarchy of where I need to go, because I think I'm like checking one of the first pieces of getting to that inner peace, like the most that's possible for me.
I like the wordplay there. The peace, Peace, and then the piece, like the puzzle piece.
Right.
So that's interesting the way you're approaching it, because you're looking at these pieces of your life and you're attaching the value of peace with them, which is smart.
Well, it's the level one, right? Like my gas mask is on right now. Like I'm like I said, I mean, if right now where I'm at, if my income dried up tomorrow, like I could live out another 7 or 8 months before even thinking twice about it. I mean, I've run out of money by the end of it, but like it's not like anyone would be knocking down my door begging for their money.
Your lifestyle.
Yeah, I would be fine. So it's like a first level of peace, but now it's making me address these other things, and recognizing that even on a day that I might go out and make like 2-3 grand, when I come home and no one's there or whatever, you're like, really, you learn really quickly, like this isn't everything. It's nice because it will give me the ability to travel and see the people I need to see, but you just start to open up to like what really matters. And long term, man, I really just want to, I think it's for everything we've talked about today, that lack of peace for so long, even into present day, I haven't allowed myself peace, right? Like if you think about a guy like Goggins, his whole mission is to not live in peace, right? Like right. Make your life hard. Right. And I've drank that Kool-Aid long enough to not allow myself that. And I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, wait a second, how much peace can I have for myself? is it really possible that I could have like monk level peace
Right.
doing all of these things? How great could I be, or what are the things I could do to offer myself such a luxury? Because, people are so sad these days and struggle so much, just like I do. But I'm asking that question of like, how could I actually get that for myself? Because I believe it's possible. That's what I was reinforcing with my brother, is like, there are people out there that live their lives. Sounds so simple, but so crazy too. Live their lives like happy, live their lives fulfilled, live their lives at peace. And that's just what I want for myself now. I'm like, that sounds so cool. Like going to bed easy at night.
Yeah, I love that awareness around peace. I would encourage you in those like times that you're alone, especially in this season with your girlfriend she's studying abroad, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, seek conversation and relationship with God, because the Bible says that he gives us the peace that surpasses all understanding. And I've found that in my life to be true. The other thing that's pretty interesting about God, I've found, particularly like God the Father, like that element of him, is that we tend to look at our relationship with God the way that our earthly father did or did not show up. And it's very hard when you've had a challenging relationship with your biological father, your earthly father, to redesign that construct with a father that is intangible, because that's really how it's designed, right? It's just to show up for our children God-like. So I'm curious what your current relationship is like with your father after all these years. We talked about that moment where you made a call, as we framed it, the cold call of your life, right? And it didn't come together. You didn't move back to North Carolina. Did you guys repair? Is it strained? Do you talk much now? What's the status there?
No. So we like tried for a little while, like he ended up moving to Fernandina on Amelia Island, where obviously I moved in 6th grade and settled, had a great life there, graduated high school there. Great place. We did a few years like through middle school, and then high school things just got worse, of almost like just this weird something in the air, I think, of just like trying to grow up and move our relationship and like grow in terms of, kind of what a father-son relationship should look like, and not just doing things together, and kind of having another level of depth and like just relationally. And it didn't really work. And then continually things happened that kind of started to bring everything together and make it all make sense of why what occurred obviously
Did that help you understand your mom's choices better?
Yeah. And me and my mom are like super tight. I mean, like I said, I make an effort to go up there every single weekend, despite paying, $1,600 a month for an apartment.
Right.
I go up there every weekend
Right.
and hang out with her. But like, to bring it into present day, just so many things have happened that were in ill light of who I knew I wanted to be. And I had just decided that for me, nothing makes sense about nurturing and investing time into something that doesn't fuel me or feed me in a good way. Like every person that I choose to spend time around serves a purpose. And when I started to realize like this doesn't serve any purpose in my life, kind of just meant that I wasn't really looking to fish anymore. Because I think a lot of it was just me fishing, like having a vision of what I wanted it to look like in terms of having a relationship with my dad. But it's
like fishing Physically fishing or fishing for his
fishing for like the right relationship
and
and the way that
so you were putting in the effort to try to create a dynamic between the two of you that worked father to son, and he wasn't matching that effort.
Yeah, and just make it make sense in a way that we could be on the same page,
Right.
and understand kind of like where I'm at and what I need as a young man, and different conversations and point of view plays a lot in my perspective of people these days. I will quickly realize like I don't need you in my life or around my life if I hear some of your perspectives that really don't align, and I'm afraid that's just very true with him. And like, yeah, it's weird. I mean, even just this weekend, I was out at the bar and like, he's there or whatever, and I'm like, look over and
Really?
we like lock eyes, of course, and then it's like, you just look away. It's like you don't know the guy.
Wait, dude, we were about to end the episode. You can't just drop that bomb. You ran into your dad at the bar this weekend and didn't say hello to him?
Yeah.
Oh shit, man.
Yeah. So and it's weird because
does he party? Is he still out? Like,
I don't really know, to be honest.
How old's your dad?
62 maybe. So a lot of weird things have happened this year. Another bomb drop. So that's interesting. But like we haven't been talking for basically like 2-3 years now, and probably like a year ago. Because it definitely, you shake up time to time. You kind of want to repair and patch and whatever.
Right. But forever, you're never gonna not want that.
I'm out golfing and I'm on the like 14th or 15th hole with some of my friends, and I get a phone call from like a random number, and I answer it, and I can't even remember her name. Hey, it's XYZ. Like, is this Colby? I'm like, yeah, this is Colby. Like,
you want to buy something?
Yeah.
What's up?
Sure, I'll say something. Hey, this is XYZ. I work with your dad. I'm pretty positive like they just picked him up in an ambulance off like the side of the road. Look, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't talk to my dad, but like, have you called anybody else? No. Okay, so now like I have to explore this scenario.
Pressure's on you.
I don't know. There was a big medical issue. I think like some sort of like stroke, something like that, and they took him down to Jacksonville, and I had a point of contact, with the hospital and seeing what's going on. And I think it kind of just hit for the first time of like, he could die. And you don't necessarily want to carry those burdens, but I think it also, for all the weird things that happen, it was also one of those times where it was like, you really have to ask yourself if you're okay for that to happen, given where things are at. And you take another level of personal accountability for, okay, you kind of got a taste of what life could be like if this sort of unexpected thing were to happen. How is that going to impact or influence you and your current situation? And, where I was at, it was like, what purpose or what is this serving my life? And I was like, well, there's not really any positive servantry in this relationship. What is it going to impact you if worst case scenario something were to happen? And it was like, it would be another piece of my life that you can't really hold on to. This is one of those things you just can't really battle. Talk about peace. Yeah. Like you get to a point where you're just done battling.
Well, it takes two to tango, man. I mean, if he's not showing up in the relationship, and yeah, sure, mano y mano, you're both men now, but there's a responsibility as a father to initiate, to pursue. And if he's not doing that, then you have to find peace with that somehow. He should have came to you, you know what I mean? And been like, hey, son, like,
yeah,
how are you? I mean, it's a freaking bar. Like, that's crazy. Just this past weekend.
Yeah. And, I mean, maybe it's because I think he knows where I stand.
Right. I'm sure he carries a lot of shame and guilt, but that's part of manning up, right? Is holding that space, opening that drawer, owning your shit, and being like, I'm not a good father, but I love you. I just don't know how, and I've done it from a distance.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a standard for me. I think that all of this to be said that like I'm so much better because of everything that's happened, and it's made me who I am today. It's given me this this edge. And
Right.
yeah, not to, people always say to me what you said earlier, like if I was doing what you're doing or knew what you knew or acted the way you act when I was your age, there's no telling where I'd be, or, you're guaranteed to be successful one day. And I kind of just brush all that off. However, I think there's a level to show that it does mean that what I've chosen to do and the things I'm actively doing are proven to work, which means that I have built a lot of faith in myself and my decision making, that it's like I don't as much move towards like, what should it be like, how should it look, and all of this other stuff. It's just, if it's not sitting right with me, then I kind of just ultimately made that decision where it's like, this is absolutely taking my peace away. For a while, the question was, what sort of peace is it going to take away from you if you don't make it right and something were to go wrong? And something kind of did happen. It almost simulated that situation. Right. And I was like, my peace is far from being rooted in any direction that goes anymore. It's almost like, they always say don't give up, but like, I mean, that's a situation that I have moved past.
Yeah, and you had to reckon with the possibility of death, and I'm sure there was probably some odd feelings of relief that would come, or even came with the idea that might happen, right? I mean, in a weird way, if your father passes, when your father passes, if it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there'll probably be, I mean, I pray that there's some form of restoration and repair in the meantime, but there'll probably be an element of peace. You'll lay that to rest and go, okay, that is what it is. It was what it was. And this is part of me. You might remember this when I was on your podcast. I talked about this idea around like a trajectory, a path, kind of like a bell curve. And I likened it to a bow and arrow, that if you take an arrow and put it on a bow, well, one, if you're just holding a bow and arrow side by side, it is of no threat. There's no danger in it. There's no purpose in it. It's just sitting there lifeless. Mm-hmm. But the moment you put the arrow and knock it on, I think they call it knocking the arrow on the bow, it's still not dangerous. It's getting closer, but it's not really of any purpose yet. But when you pull that bow back, now you're in business, right? Mm-hmm. Now you're dealing with a lethal weapon. And the way I think of that is, the more you pull back on your past and you go back into the parts of your life that are painful and that are, uniquely your story, and you like pull those things forward, because you're doing this whether you know it or not. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's informing your future. It's part of your identity. It's just there. But if you can do it intentionally, that's what therapy is great for. That's what personal development, relationships, and conversations like this are. Then now all of a sudden you have, as you put it a moment ago, you have this edge, you have this lethal weapon where you're like, you think my own father rejected me. You think I'm worried about you not buying this ticket to this event? You kidding me right now, right? So it's all relative. For me, and some of the things I've been able to accomplish and persevere through and, create, it's like, bro, my basic needs weren't even met. You think I'm worried about that shit? So I just commend you for that, man, because I think you're doing it intentionally. I think you're doing it probably partially unintentionally, and you are pulling back from and through and pulling all that shit forward, and it's becoming part of your authentic identity. And that's the space to be in, man. That's where it's sustainable, where you're like, you know what? I can do this forever. Yeah. I get paid, bank, to just be myself. Let's go.
That's peace. That's peace right there. Like, that's the whole thing is, I remember bringing it up on the last pod, and I think this can kind of be my finishing, note. Going into, it was 2023 where I just decided, like, look, I'm going to be, because this was that first transformation of like just kind of bouncing around one with the wind and trying to please everybody to, I'm going to do what serves me, my people, and my thing. And that was, the statement for my year in 2023 was just unapologetically me. Mm. And if you got a problem with that, then maybe we're not the best fit to be together or work together. And by living a life based in principle, when someone has something against me, I can literally laugh and be like, that's great. Because if you have a problem with me, it's a clear sign that like you have your own set of problems. Probably me and you aren't in alignment. Like there's not a world that I live in that there can't be peace amongst me and the like-minded individuals. And
you're not going to win them all, man. Not everyone's going to love you and think you smell like roses. And I think the part that's exciting about that is you have a factor in your authenticity and in your unapologetic you that is giving and is loving and is caring and is charitable and philanthropic. When you were talking earlier about impact, it's that ripple effect. If you go to a pond or a lake and you toss a small stone, it's going to make a certain size splash and the ripple's going to be a certain size. But if you drop a boulder, or a huge stone, or you kind of pick up a big rock and throw it into the water, there's going to be that much larger of an impact. So there's no discounting the smaller stones, but if you're wired as such, and if you've had certain events in your life that have informed this identity and created this, who and why, then it becomes sort of a disservice to the world to not take those traumas combined with those blessings and make a big splash. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say is it's like, I don't need to apologize for being me because there's a lot of good in there. I don't have to pretend like I'm good because I am good. And I don't have to pretend like I'm bad because I am bad. You know what I mean? I'm good and bad. And I was born in sin and I'm in this fallen world, but I'm doing me and I'm going to do it. But the other thing I talk about, and you said it earlier too, is like a lot of men in America, they want to fit their nest. They want to just have their little world. And I can't respect it. Put differently, they're consumers. They're not producers. And they might make good money, but they're still, if you look at their life, they're buying things, they're consuming things, they're doing things for experiences. And if you were to just measure, you'd be like, what do you produce? Mm-hmm. Right? And most people are consumers, not producers. And you, my friend, are a producer. You're creating, you're producing, you're productive. And I think it shows up in all the areas of your life. So I would say, man, you're on your way, and keep being unapologetically you, and keep opening that drawer. Stop commingling it, right? Just hold that space, shut the drawer, and move forward until something hits and you go, oh, here we are. I got to open that drawer again. So it's going to keep going fluid, man. But I'm pumped to be part of your story and to be friends with you. So
I appreciate it. Yeah. It's cool to see all this is coming together, and, it's a process for sure. But I think that, that's the point I'm at right now is like, I think that peace side is going to be that's like a new vision for me. I've never said that in the past. And I think that to create what I'm working on now, like, getting clarity in conversations like this and like, what do I have to offer? Well, hopefully long term, like that's it right there. Is like, there's a lot of problems going on right now. There's a lot of issues that people are facing. And to be able to say that I helped other people, like the same way, I mean, I'm, like I said earlier, measuring your days, being so much happier and more fulfilled now than I was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. To be able to offer that same experience to someone else would be truly incredible. So I appreciate you having me on today, making this happen, help me kind of continue to find some peace, and talk a little bit about how down the line, like I'll continue to share this with other people and sayings like this, and really hope that other people can find the same things I have and experience that whole new level of enjoyment of life, and continuously pursue a higher one too, until, hopefully one day that you're actually wise enough and truthful enough to everything in your life that you can say like, It would be really freaking cool one day to say, like, I'm my highest, most peaceful self possible.
Yeah. I think you're on your way, man. It was great doing this episode with you. The lighting is interesting right now. It's really, really bright. And if you, I'm going to go back and I always watch the episodes so that I can throw up in my mouth listening to myself speak, but to just, get a feel for the vibe of it all. But we kind of went through a roller coaster of your story, and the natural lighting kind of followed it. Like it got dark for a little bit here. And I was like, is it going to storm out? And now we're finishing on a positive note, and it's super bright.
The room is full. It's so peaceful.
It's so peaceful, man. Zen AF. Gen Z Trailblazer, Colby Harris, my man.
Thanks, Nate.